Not much in this world can beat the sensation of standing on the edge of a cliff in the face of both danger and beauty. One false move and you meet your doom. But if you look out into the distance, you'll see endless views of sweeping grasslands, raging oceans, or a gorgeous sunrise. Winding limestone walls caused by erosion that began long before humans walked the earth. These are some of the most beautiful places on the planet. Join me for today's video. We're going to count down the 15 most beautiful cliffs and canyons. Number 15. White Cliffs of Dover. The White Cliffs of Dover is the region of English coastline overlooking the Strait of Dover and France. There are very few places in the world like it, and it isn't very difficult to see why. The cliff face, which reaches a spectacular height of 350 feet, owes its striking white appearance to its composition of chalk accented by streaks of black flint, deposited during the late Cretaceous period when beasts like the Spinosaurus, Triceratops, Velociraptors, and ferocious T-Rex roamed around. Stretching across the town of Dover in Kent for 8 miles, the White Cliffs form part of the North Downs. But these White Cliffs are also part of the Dover to Kingsdown Cliff Site of special scientific interest and special area of conservation. And they're one of the most celebrated landmarks in all of the United Kingdom, making it onto postage stamps more than once. But unlike so many of Earth's gorgeous locales, the White Cliffs of Dover are changing dramatically as the world turns and human intervention causes the environment to change at exponential rates. Thousands of years ago, the cliffs were eroding less than an inch per year, but research shows that this erosion rate over the last 150 years has increased to nearly 1 foot a year, which is caused by the loss of beach underneath the cliffs, exacerbated by stronger storms and human activity like gravel extraction. Despite all this, though, the cliffs are expected to survive for tens of thousands of years more, albeit less and less majestic as the ever-rising tides continue to consume them, causing chunks of rock the size of a football pitch to fall into the ocean, never to be seen again. Number 14. Antelope Canyon. The Antelope Canyon in Arizona has been around since the dawn of time, but millions of years of erosion have made it what it is today. Perhaps one of the most Instagram-worthy places in the world, it truly is a sight to behold. The Sandstone Canyon sits 120 feet above the seabed, with hues of red and yellow throughout the narrow and winding passage. When you come here, it's easy to feel like you're on another planet, especially when the sunlight beams through. The canyon was given its name because of the pronghorn antelope that once roamed the area, and the Navajo people native to the area named it the place where water runs through rocks. Luckily, this natural wonder of the world is owned and protected by members of the Navajo Nation, who ensure that Antelope Canyon will endure the test of time. But visiting the canyon requires guided tours because of serious flash flooding, and getting here at the wrong time of year could spell disaster for anyone who didn't do their research beforehand. Billions of years of monsoons are what cause these smooth tunnels, and they won't be stopping anytime soon. But rain does not have to fall on or even near the Antelope Canyon slots for flash floods to whip up. Rain falling dozens of miles away can funnel into them with little notice. Sadly, in the summer of 1997, 11 tourists were killed in Lower Antelope Canyon by a flash flood, with the lone survivor of the group only making it out alive thanks to his swift water training. Number 13. The Indus Gorge. The Himalayas contain over 100 peaks and run for about 1,500 miles, and so it's bound to have some of the greatest cliffs and canyons in the world. But with so much going on, it can be pretty tough to choose the best. But the Indus Gorge is certainly one of them. Believed by many experts to be the deepest canyon in the world, the Himalayas' Indus Gorge cuts down into the mountains at an elevation of about 17,000 feet near Nanga Parbat, which is the 9th largest mountain in the world. Head to the peak, look straight down, and you'll find the gorgeous bright blue Indus River. But could you jump in? Well, the river is nearly 4,500 feet deep, so you might be okay. In fact, the Indus River is the largest river in Asia. What makes this canyon so spectacular and so riveting aside from the views is the fact that it took millions of years for this to form. Erosion caused by the Indus River allowed it to reroute itself, carving its own path as it leads to the plains of Punjab and Pakistan. Its estimated annual flow stands at around 50 cubic miles, making it the 21st largest river in the world in terms of annual flow, and it's been a source of wonder since the classical period and the times of King Darius of Persia, when he sent Greek explorer Scylax of Karyanda to explore the river in 510 BC. But can we explore the gorge today? Well, the short answer is yes, but instead of braving it by yourself, it's best to sign up for an adventure tour. Number 12. Gorge du Verdon. The Verdon Gorge is a gorgeous river canyon located in southeastern France. It's just over 15 miles long and half a mile deep, making it safe enough for the high dive off the top of the peaks. This canyon is formed by the Verdon River, which is named for its characteristic turquoise-green color, and like so many other canyons in the world, this gorgeous gorge is as old as time itself. During the Triassic period, it was covered by the sea, leaving thick layers of various limestone deposits. Cut to a few million years later, the Jurassic period roared its head, and the area was covered by a warm, shallow sea, which allowed the growth of various corals. The Cretaceous period saw what is now Basse Province being raised and the sea reaching the current location of the Alps, which were themselves erected during this Tertiary era. As a result of the large-scale geological activity, many of those older limestone deposits fractured, forming reliefs within the valleys and other such features. The origins of the Verdon Gorge can be traced back to this era. The whole thing was quite literally years in the making, with so many small factors adding up to create this French canyon. So as one can imagine, something this beautiful is going to bring a lot of sightseers, so the gorge is beyond popular with tourists who can drive around its rim, rent kayaks to travel on the river, and of course, hike. And for the daredevils, the limestone walls are the real highlight here, and hundreds of multi-pitch climbers come here every year to scale the rock faces, choosing from 1,500 different routes, ranging from 65 feet to 1,300 feet high. Number 11. Tiger Leaping Gorge. The Tiger Leaping Gorge is one of the tributaries belonging to southeast China's Yangtze River. And the first thing anyone will notice is the awesome name. The canyon gets its name from an old Chinese legend that told of a tiger who escaped a hunter by leaping across the gorge. The altitude difference between the surrounding mountain peaks and the riverbed reaches well over 12,000 feet, making it one of the deepest gorges on the planet. So if you're afraid of heights, don't look down this one. Besides the spectacular scenery, a hike along the gorge is also an absolute must for anyone looking to travel to this area. But the Tiger Leaping Gorge isn't just a pretty face. It's also home to the indigenous Nasi people, who live in a handful of secluded hamlets, living off the land as best as one can in this modern world. Most travelers choose the High Road Trail, which is well maintained and waymarked, but it doesn't make it any less harrowing. The terrain here is very rough, and while the trail is only 14 miles long, it usually takes 2 days to traverse, and hikers can stay overnight in one of the guest houses along the way. The scenery along the Tiger Leaping Gorge changes as the trail moves along, offering views of lived-in Nasi villages, agricultural terraces, waterfalls, high mountains, and sheer cliffs. But the most notable and most challenging section of the trail is known as 28 Bends. It's named for its 28 steep uphill serpentine curves. The gorge also belongs to the 3 parallel rivers of Yunnan Protected Area's World Heritage Site. Number 10. Bryce Canyon National Park. If you can manage to weave your way through the 1.5 million people that visit this site each year, then Bryce National Park in Utah is well worth the visit. But what makes it stand out from other popular hiking spots? Well, its unusual spires and structures known as hoodoos that populate the canyon for as far as the eye can see, some of which are an impressive 10 stories tall. The hoodoos of Bryce Canyon were formed by water freezing and melting over and over again in the cracks of the sedimentary rocks, which makes them look like they were put here by aliens. But despite the number of visitors it sees each year, Bryce Canyon sits in a remote location and covers almost 36,000 acres of land. If you were flying over the landmark, you might think it was a sprawling metropolitan city filled with skyscrapers at first glance. But alas, the structures of Bryce Canyon are almost too amazing to have been conceived by the limited minds of even the most imaginative humans. Number 9. Fjarðargljúfur. Off the beaten path of Iceland's famed ring road is the difficult-to-pronounce Fjarðargljúfur. At just over a mile long, it may not have the enormous expanses of the world's other mighty canyons, but it certainly beats out many of the other world's canyons when it comes to sheer beauty. This place is made up of an assortment of crazy rock formations that you really can't find anywhere else. These Icelandic rocks reach up towards the sky, flanking a river like massive ancient guardians. Of course, a walking trail lets travelers move along the top of the crags, leading to a certain spot that lets hikers feel as though they're standing on top of their very own kingdom of fairy tale-like natural wonders. When the river was birthed from the slowly melting glaciers and carved its way through the land about 2 million years ago, it whittled out strange geologic patterns. The walls jut in and out, swerving back and forth so the water takes the shape of a blue snake slithering across the terrain. The majestic canyon slices through a patch of lush green earth. The river weaves through the verdant chasm, reflecting the colors of the sky and the clouds above in its rippling water. The whole place has an enchanting feel. It's the kind of landscape where you'd expect elves at odds with orcs fighting to give Frodo a chance to get away. The best time to hit this place is on an especially wet, gray, and dreary day when the clouds feel low and the river surges along with the rain. Number 8. Painted Hills. The west coast of the United States is known for having some pretty spectacular scenery, but the state of Oregon really manages to stand out with its diverse environment. Oregon's Painted Hills look is in a class of its own. It's only accessible by car, and as soon as you pull in here, you'll think that you've stepped out of a spaceship and landed on Mars, because otherworldly is the only word to describe this place. This place is old, like 35 million years old. This ancient river floodplain was once a home to all sorts of tropical flora and fauna, and all that remains are the gorgeous multicolored hills. You're treated to blacks, yellows, purples, and the striking red colors of the Painted Hills that are especially beautiful right at sunset, and these colors will even change depending on the weather and moisture in the air, meaning this place is worth multiple visits. In the spring, you can see all of the yellow wildflowers bloom, and then in the winter, the white blankets of snow cover this Martian landscape. The Painted Hills have changed colors as the Earth's climate has slowly changed over millennia, which means it's likely that as time passes and new generations come to appreciate the hills, the colors will have changed even more. Number 7. Todra Gorge. Tucked right into the east side of Morocco's High Atlas Mountains, Todra Gorge is one of the most spectacular canyons in the world, hands down. Here, both the Todra River and the Dades River have gorgeously carved out all of these cliff-sided canyons for a 25-mile stretch through the mountains, leaving behind this series of reliefs and etches in the rock. This is another stunning example of nature's power. The Todra is the name of the last 600 meters, just under 2,000 feet, of the canyons. In places, this gorge measures just 33 feet across, but the cliffs are more than 500 feet tall on either side. The river has since dried up, leaving only the imagination to picture a powerful natural force that once carved this region. The gorge, though in a remote area of Morocco, is a popular tourist destination, and it's been outfitted over the years with hiking paths and well-maintained dirt roads that visitors can walk along, though they must share it with mules and other pack animals. The town of Tinihir has grown to accommodate tourists and locals passing through this area with their possessions on camelback. Tinihir, which houses just 36,000 permanent residents, swells to nearly 90,000 residents in popular holiday months. A region of Ouarzazate, the town is mostly populated by Amazighs, which is what many Berbers, the indigenous peoples of North Africa west of the Nile Valley, call themselves. It roughly translates to free people or free and noble men, and free is how you will feel if you ever make the trip down there. Number 6. Todra Gorge. Let's head on over to Taiwan for the next entry on our list. It's made up of towering walls of marble and limestone fit for a king, covered in abundant subtropical greenery that looks like it jumped from the pages of the Jungle Book, dotted with fantastic shrines riddled with tunnels and spanned by hanging bridges. The extraordinary and dramatic landscapes of the Todra Gorge are unrivaled. Originally recognized as a national park during the Empire of Japan's colonial occupation, the Todra Gorge was once the home of the indigenous Troko people. In their language, Toroko roughly translates to magnificent and beautiful. How fitting then. But cut to 1986 and the land was then recreated into a national park by the government. Sadly though, the local Troko people have since been driven from their homes on the cliffs, and all that remains of their time here are old ruins. One of the main attractions of the Todra Gorge is the Eternal Spring Shrine, which has been rebuilt twice after being destroyed by landslides. Then there's the Tunnel of 9 Turns, which follows a particularly dramatic series of tight turns along the narrow gorge, where one false move means taking quite a tumultuous tumble down the cliff face. Another long, unlit tunnel known as the Bayang Waterfall Trail allows the bravest of hikers the most extraordinary views of sheets of waterfalls at the far end. But even cooler is that this national park sees an annual marathon every November. Number 5. Vermillion Cliffs National Monument. Perhaps better known as The Wave, the Vermillion Cliffs National Monument in Arizona looks more like an art project than a natural formation. But that's what erosion and seismic activity will do to a place. The Vermillion Cliffs' claim to fame are the smooth, wave-like rocks and reddish hues that can change color throughout the day as the sun passes over the sandstone rocks. Believe it or not, this formation is pretty fragile, and the Bureau of Land Management that protects it holds a daily lottery to give away just 10 tickets at the nearby visitor center in order to maintain the monument for as long as humanly possible. Coupled with the fact that it's incredibly hard and treacherous to reach, human contact with the Vermillion Cliffs is really kept to the bare minimum. And if you want to visit this breathtaking locale, get ready to throw your name into the hat 4 months in advance. And you can't even get a map of the area unless you're one of the lucky few who have been selected. Although making a place more exclusive can add to its mystique, the Vermillion Cliffs National Monument doesn't need the extra press to garner this much-deserved attention. Number 4. The Widyans of Jordan. When one thinks of Jordan, they don't always think of abundant bodies of water, and when they think of the Dead Sea, it's not hard to think of endless amounts of salt. But the Widyans of Jordan flip both of those notions on their head. The water of these Jordanian canyons originates from the west and bursts through from hot springs and even the occasional melting of winter snow before rushing down towards the lowest point on Earth, the Dead Sea. For millions of years, the water has chipped away at the rock to create these stunning layers of stone, of burnt orange, tan, and dusty pink in places like Wadi Mujib, and the granite boulders and fire-colored walls in Wadi Zarak Ma'in, and plainer, chalkier sandstone walls in canyons such as Wadi Himara. It truly is a stunning sight that changes along with the seasons. In the winter and early spring, the canyons will overflow with water, and it's far too dangerous to hike them. Come summer and fall, the water slows, providing hikers and adventurers with a perfect opportunity to gaze upon not just the scenery, but the wildlife that exists only here. And despite being in this part of the world, it's not uncommon to find lush vegetation, crabs, and even the occasional fishermen at the lower altitudes. But move to the higher areas of the canyons and you'll find animals like mountain cats and ibex. And if you can push yourself to the very end of the trails, you'll be greeted with a breathtaking waterfall. This series of canyons have made it into some of our oldest stories, including the Old Testament. These canyons were as important to locals in the past as they are today. For example, Bible scholars have to determine with a great degree of certainty what Wadi Mujib is synonymous with, what is referred to in the Old Testament as the River Arnon. Number 3. The Grand Canyon. Of course, I have to include the Grand Canyon on this list. Where to even begin with this area? The Grand Canyon is an incredibly extensive system cut by the Colorado River in northwestern Arizona in the United States. The canyon goes a mile deep in many areas and extends for nearly 300 miles, from northern Arizona to the Grand Wash Cliffs near the Nevada border. Nearly 2 billion years of Earth's geological history have been exposed here as the Colorado River and its tributaries cut their channels through layer after layer of rock, while the Colorado Plateau was uplifted to what we see today, with several studies supporting the hypothesis that the Colorado River established its course through the area about 5 to 6 million years ago. And while the Grand Canyon may seem inhospitable to modern-day people, the area has been inhabited by indigenous Americans for thousands of years, living in settlements within the caves. To this day, this is a holy site for the Pueblo people, many of whom still make the pilgrimage here. It may not be the deepest canyon in the world, but the Grand Canyon is known for its visually overwhelming size and its intricate and colorful landscape. Geologically, it's significant because of the thick sequence of ancient rocks that are well preserved and exposed in the walls of this Grand Canyon. Number 2. Seven Sisters Cliffs. The rolling cliffs, known as the Seven Sisters, rival even the White Cliffs of Dover for their ivory clarity, but they're not going to last forever. While it's quite likely that the Seven Sisters will outlive us all, the constant crashing of ocean waves at their base is causing them to fall piece by piece back into the ocean. And when the final cliff has fallen, it's going to be a very sad day. Beyond picturesque, these cliffs are known as the Seven Sisters thanks to the 7 distinct hilltops that comprise the silhouette of the cliffs, and the bright color of the stone is caused by the abundance of chalk that makes up most of the cliff face. The features were created in prehistoric times when the land was submerged and seawater pushed the softer chalk to the surface, and as the waters lowered, exposed the cliffs. Now, as the sea pounds the base of the cliffs each day, erosion is slowly taking the chalk back as large chunks of the cliff walls fall back into the water. Luckily for the Seven Sisters cliffs, this process of erosion has allowed them to retain their white pallor, since similar cliff faces around the world have received increased protection to halt that erosion. They have begun to accumulate vegetation that's slowly modeling their color. But if the Seven Sisters looks familiar to those out there who still haven't visited, that's because they've been featured in a handful of popular films like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and Atonement. Number 1. The Stone Forest. In China's Yunnan province is a stunning 270 million-year-old forest. And while you'll find plenty of trees here, it's the stones that give the stone forest its name. The stone forest covers about 300 square kilometers of the landscape, and it's absolutely stunning, to say the least. This forest has undergone millennia of seismic activity and water and wind erosion to give the limestone its unique shapes and formations, and it's since become a UNESCO World Heritage Site too. And for good reason. The enormous pillars almost create huge networks of labyrinths that I'm sure are pretty easy to get lost in. Which is fine, because why would you ever want to leave this majestic area? It's awesome. The most famous stone here, the Ashima stone, is said to have formed after a beautiful young girl named Ashima turned to stone after having been forbidden to marry the man she loves. The locals also hold the Torch Festival every June, which includes plenty of dancing, dragon playing, bullfighting, and wrestling. Let's just say this place rocks. I'll see you next time.
Watch our nature playlist for more top 15 videos about beautiful nature. Sit back, relax, and binge watch all of our best nature videos.